Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Son of Prometheus podcast. This is part 1 of Twins of Destruction, following the story of Julius Caesar. If you like this series, please feel free to subscribe. Now let's begin. We last left off with war being declared.
Oh shit, here we go again.
After so many abuses being laid at their feet, Carthage took the final step. Back in Iberia, Hannibal sacks the Roman ally city of Saguntum. With the preparations complete, starting from his father and brother-in-law, Hannibal leaves his brother Hannibal in charge of Iberia. With his other brother Mago, Hannibal was set off from Iberia, leading nearly 90,000 infantry and 12,000 cavalry. Along the way, he would deposit small garrisons to protect his supply lines throughout Iberia and southern Gaul. The Romans had their own plans already. The two consuls, who were the top politicians, think presidents, each had a separate route of invasion. Publius Scipio will land in Iberia and destroy Hannibal and the power base he had there. The other, Sempronius Longus, would invade Africa and deal a knockout shot to Carthage itself. Hannibal, being the Lion of Carthage, had different plans for the war. He would lead the Roman ambitions to his own tune. Like a grand conductor, his orchestra was already falling in place. In southern Gaul, which is modern-day France, Hannibal planned to cross the Rhone River, with the Roman ally of Massalia due to the south. By pure luck, Scipio's army was crossing through here, on the way to Iberia. Both generals had sent scouting cavalry up and down the Rhone River, and a brief skirmish entailed. The Romans were driven back. Now, not want to be seen, Hannibal forced a crossing very quickly. Scipio would head north, but when he arrived, all he would find is the remains of Hannibal's camp. Scipio then made a move most unusual. He would send his older brother and ex-consul, Gnaeus Scipio, over to Iberia with the full army to continue the war. Meanwhile, Scipio himself would return to Etruria, which is modern-day Tuscany in Italy. Here he acquired 3 legions that were under lesser commanders who was meant to keep the Gauls in check in northern Italy after a recent rebellion. He would begin drilling this recently defeated army back to standards. Also, he would send word to Rome of what has happened. The Senate was dumbfounded. To everyone with common sense, Hannibal was planning to cross the Alps. To better understand, to the Romans, the Alps was as impressive as a barrier as the Pacific Ocean is to America today. Having received Gallic embassies from the tribes of the Po River Valley already, Hannibal began his ascent into those impossible peaks. He spent 15 days of hell marching and creating a route for his men in those mountains thousands of feet in the freezing skies. It must have been cold. Before the climb, Hannibal released his most unreliable and unwilling forces, some 30,000 men. These men definitely could not be trusted. Finally reaching a summit that he can see over the whole Po River Valley, Hannibal told his men that there it is, your prize, all of Italy. All we need to do is reach out for it. Finally, he would send down the valley with only 35,000 infantry and 8,000 cavalry. A heavy price was definitely paid here. To boost his men's morale, they quickly defeated a pro-Roman Gallic tribe, massacring them all, and then the other Gallic tribe would then send messages of alliance. Scipio then set into a frenzy when he received word of Hannibal's quick passage of the Alps with an intact army that was already being strengthened. He sends word to his fellow consul to quickly arrive. He himself swiftly moved to confront Hannibal ASAP. This was also a surprise to Hannibal, believing Scipio would be in Iberia now, not already here with legions. Both set up camp not too far from one another. Once the scouting parties realized how close they were, each man prepared for battle. Hannibal the next day sent 6,000 of his cavalry, and Scipio used all of his cavalry, some 4,000, alongside 1,000 javelin men, known as Velites. In this first battle of the war, Hannibal, seeing the Roman Velites forming up in the front, decided this was the perfect time and immediately charged forward. With the Romans not in order yet, chaos quickly ensued. The consul found himself surrounded. Seeing this, a young Roman cavalryman bravely charged forward. Inspiring a few men to join him, they managed to save the consul and bring him back safely. Hannibal would win the Battle of the Tichinus. Later on, the consul Scipio publicly thanked the young man. Of course, the young man being the consul's own son, and the man who would defeat Hannibal in the end, Scipio Africanus, known simply as Scipio at this point. Shortly after the battle, in late December, Hannibal faced the remains of Scipio's army alongside his co-consul, who had finally arrived from his long march from Sicilia. With a double consul army, Roman law detailed that each consul controlled the whole army every other day. This played well into Hannibal's hands. He studied their personalities and looked for weak spots. And he realized Consul Sempronius Longus was a very traditional Roman general, who was eager for battle and glory. So on a cold summer morning, the Roman camp was engulfed by javelins screaming in all directions. It was the Numidian cavalry of Hannibal. They had surrounded them and were launching volley after volley. First, Sempronius sent the cavalry out in full pursuit. Realizing the Numidian was traveling over the Trevi River, but seeing no progress being made, he ordered the full Roman army out in battle formation. This was his moment to shine, he thought, but his co-consul Scipio sat him down and calmly advised him against this. Sempronius, coming to his senses, agreed with his co-consul, ordering all his men back, while organizing a peace talk delegation.
Gay!
Ha! He would never. Roman bravery was dear to Sempronius. He sent his half-awake and hungry army over that cold river. Retiring his cavalry back, staying above the marsh sands he saw to the south, the Romans saw the full Punic army in battle formation. They were fed and waiting. The Roman heavy infantry in the center hit that Punic line of Gallic allies. Proud Romans for sure, Hannibal's Libyans and Iberians on their wings kept the Roman allied forces and cavalry in check. The Roman heavy infantry kept pushing back the Gallic allies in the center, back and back, step by step, and then they just kept marching forward, forgetting the whole battle and their allies in the rear. Without the center, the Roman wings were now being surrounded. The Punic cavalry whipped around the Roman rear, but met with stiff resolve from the Triarii, the spearmen of the Roman third line. During the stalemate, Mago raced out of the marshlands from the south with 1,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry.
Surprise, motherfucker!
These men joined the fight against the rear and broke it. The Roman allies, now being fully surrounded, were easily killed. Thus, while nearly 15,000 Romans survived, they left behind 30,000 dead. The Battle of the Trebia marked Hannibal's first major victory against Rome. Hannibal now faced a new problem. He knew that his Gallic allies would not want to keep fighting on their own territory. There were two roads facing into Etruria over the Apennine Mountains. It was now early summer, and both new consuls each blocked a separate road. Geminus being stationed at Ariminum in the east, and Flaminius at Arretium in the center. Fearing a siege of either would lead him to be surrounded by the other, he chose a third option. He traveled through the Apennine Mountains west of Arretium, and then right through the Arno marshes. This horrible landscape, where not a dry spot to be found, or even a towel, was traveled by the army for 4 days and 3 nights. Hannibal, riding his last elephant, would catch an infection in one of his eyes, later losing sight in it. It was a perfect sacrifice for the war. Scarface would be proud. Flaminius, the consul at Arretium, was horrified to hear of Hannibal's unexpected crossing. He sent word to his fellow consul at Ariminum over the mountains to hurry the hell up and join him to achieve certain victory. Hannibal, knowing Flaminius was a new man in Roman politics, first of his family to be called consul, also being a plebeian, a lower class, this information was used by Hannibal to great effect. Knowing he would stay in Arretium waiting for reinforcements because he could not afford to lose a battle, Hannibal set fire to the Etrurian countryside. This area was compared to Silicon Valley to the rich patricians. They would quickly blame Flaminius of cowardice because of his low family status, but he stayed put and true to his strategy. So Hannibal marched close by Arretium, showing his confidence to leave 2 enemy armies in his rear. The resolve of Flaminius soon broke. What Roman could allow an enemy to march right past them? With the massive Lake Trasimene to the southeast, following the way Hannibal marched, Flaminius began to give chase. In the night sky, far past the lake, Punic campfires were seen in the distance at their base. Early the next morning, it was foggy outside. The Roman army marched alongside the lake edge and some low hills on the far side. Flaminius, being in the center, listened to the stillness of the air. Suddenly, he heard fighting yelling towards the front of his lines.
Here we go.
What could it be? Then he could see in the distance Libyans and Iberians forming a wall and holding against the Roman front. Then, as quickly as he realized it, the trap was released. Alongside his entire army, Hannibal's men launched volleys of javelins and arrows and stones, and then they came charging through the mist and down the hills. The Punic cavalry would block the path of retreat. The consul drew his sword. He would not bring shame to his family's name. All morning, the Carthaginians sliced through the consul's army. Flaminius would die fighting here. Some Romans went into the lake, trying to retreat or surrender, but they were all cut down. Hannibal had no time for prisoners. Rome lost about 15,000 men. This defeat would lead to them electing a dictator, a man who, like a king, held single authority of life and death, even above the consuls themselves. Fabius Maximus, the dictator, made sure that the rest of the year no large army could be defeated by Hannibal. He broke up every other army into smaller forces and scattered them across Italy. This allowed Hannibal to cross into southern Italy unchallenged by 216. Soon, Fabius would step down as dictator, and new consuls was duly elected, Lucius Paulus and Marcus Varro. Both men ran on the promise of finally defeating Hannibal by amassing the largest Roman army ever seen. This is what Hannibal always wanted. He would capture an important grain depot near Canusium to lure the Romans in. Paulus would heed Fabius's warning, but Varro was sick of this cowardice talk.
No, don't like that.
Like at the Trebia, a double consul army now approached him. Near the dusty plains of Cannae, he saw a Roman army standing 90,000 strong. This was the largest army Rome has ever fielded. He only had 45,000 men at this point in time, so day in and day out Hannibal offered the Roman battle, but they declined. Finally, on a Varro day, the whole army was sent out. He had been studying the Punic formation, with the weaker Gallic allies in the center facing in a crescent moon formation towards the Romans, and on both flanks were the strong Iberians and Libyans, and cavalry in each of those flanks. Varro, with a 2-to-1 advantage in manpower, decided to just plow right through the middle of it and destroy his army from the sides. Feeling confident, Varro sent the cavalry out, and the Punics led them on a chase all the way down the field. Step by step, the infantry pushed back the Gallic allies. Then, someone must have been the first to realize that they have now marched forward without breaking the Punic line on the sides. Now, looking on both sides of them, they realized they were in trouble. Then, the worst thing could happen. Hannibal would halt the Gallic allies and have them move forward. This was the worst thing possible. Seeing an escape opportunity, Varro escaped out. Punic cavalry, after winning their engagement, closed the door of retreat and completed the trap soon after. This smaller Punic army had just fully engulfed an army twice its size. For the next several hours, tens of thousands of Romans were slaughtered in the area of a modern football stadium. No home field advantage here. Some Romans were later found in the center with their heads buried in the ground. To some, this was easier than waiting and knowing that death was creeping ever so slowly, ever so violently. Paulus, who was given a chance to retreat, decided against it. He was later found dead. Varro and some 4,000 Romans escaped. Hannibal in 216, after the Battle of Cannae, held the Republic of Rome in his hands. Next time, we'll continue the story following Hannibal's great victory and the career of the young Scipio Africanus, who managed to save his country in the end. Thanks for watching, for we are his children, and I am the son of Prometheus.